do it, you know? Yay! All right, good Monday morning, everybody. I don't know if you guys are like any of us on this show. Bern and I are suffering from a sinus infection. We are sinus infection buddies. Okay. And so, if you're blowing your nose or have a cough or whatever, we feel you and totally relate to you. You are not alone. Okay. Welcome to, I don't even know, allergies, cold, flu, COVID, whatever is going on. You are not alone. Okay. But you guys, good morning. You guys are listening to Author Talk with me, Amy Fern, and our lovely guest today is Roger. So, you guys, hey, how was everybody's weekend?
Well, like I said, I'm trying to get over this sinus infection, and I discovered, I did a lot of real estate this weekend, showed houses and stuff, and I've discovered that I am allergic to cats. I love cats; they're cute, and I just apparently cannot be in their vicinity, in their home, for 24 hours plus because pain. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Well, yes, yes, they are. I have a cat. I have two. I really only like one of my kitties. The other one is Josh's. I only like my black cat because he loves me back. My other one just, looks like living furniture. But I totally feel you on that one. Roger, what about you? What did you do this weekend?
I have been getting ready for Indiepalooza.
Ooh.
Yeah, I just like to get geared up and think about what I want to share and kind of do the background information work that I want to make sure that I give everybody exactly what they're looking for so that we can move you from inspiration to publication to production to success so that everything that you've ever dreamed of can happen. And we have Fern to thank for that because she's the one who's spearheading everything.
Yeah. Indiepalooza is this weekend, and so we are, gearing up for all of that. So if you haven't already bought your ticket, plan to attend, you can also, if you cannot attend us live, you can purchase the recordings. I'll put the link in the comment here shortly. But, it is a fantastic conference. I do love it. I will be there this year speaking on book launches. It's my speaking year, I guess. But no, you guys, it was yes, Indiepalooza is going to be so awesome. My weekend was, interesting. On Friday, I, had my doctor's visit and had my sinus infection. So I'm on antibiotics and stuff like that. I missed a networking thing that I was going to go to. I'm feeling the best I have felt in a while today. And, I don't sound all nasally like I did last week. So improvements, okay? Improvements.
We've been improving. It's been slow but steady, but we've been improving. But let me tell you, I'm so excited. Okay, for those of you guys who have not yet purchased your ticket, or for those of you who have, I know there was a question about the recordings. Mm-hmm. So the conference will be recorded. We are going to be recording. And if you purchase the 3-day pass, you're going to be there with us the 3 days. You have the recordings for 7 days. So everybody who purchases the 3-day pass is going to have access to the recordings for 7 days. If you would like a lifetime access pass with no limit on how often you can, listen to them or whatever, that is an option you can add on. You can purchase a lifetime pass. Okay. So I just wanted to clarify because somebody was asking about last time we had a specific one for 7 days, but we figured, we give everybody access to the recordings for 7 days. And then if you want to have access all the time later, you can. Because I don't know about you, Roger, but when I go to these things, that whole day of breakouts and panels and stuff, don't you get overwhelmed, information overload?
Yes, I end up with just so many notes in so many different places that, I've even advised people when they go to conferences to just really decide 1, 2, or 3 things you absolutely want to learn and focus on just those elements. And then everything else you learn, put it in the secondary file. It's just like, oh, this is interesting. Someday I may need this, but not right now. Because if I'm trying to prioritize everything and thinking it's all at the very top, it's just mind-boggling. So I was just like, okay, for right now, for me, I need to know this, this, and this, and I want to move forward. And I guarantee, if that's your case, if you're coming to Indiepalooza, you are going to get those questions answered. If you have those in mind, you're going to run into somebody, you're going to connect with somebody, either the speaker is going to share it, or you're going to run into somebody else on a Zoom link and they're going to say, oh yeah, we did this and this worked for me. So, I'm encouraging the participants, have a goal, have 1, 2, or 3 goals. It's like, this is what I need, this is what I want. And then everything else is secondary. Take it in as you can, file it away for future use. Maybe you'll use it, maybe you won't.
Yep. I love that piece of advice because it's true. I think that we're all in very different paths of our journey. We're in different places, and so just knowing, like, what do I immediately need now,
Yes.
and focusing on that, and then also having just available the other information. And sometimes you just don't know what you need until you realize it, until somebody says it.
Yes. And so maybe a goal can simply be, I need to get clear about what a next step would be. Maybe you've had the inspiration to write a book, or maybe you've written a book and just like, I don't know what to do next. There are so many things that I could do. You can look online and it's just like, well, there are so many things I could do, but I don't know who does it well. I don't know the industry enough. I don't know who to trust and everything. So maybe your objective can be just, I really want to get clear on what my next step would be. And how do I start searching beyond this conference?
Yep. And we've got Greg coming on board. He's going to be with us talking about podcasts. And, your keynote speech, Roger, is about all the hats that we wear.
Yes.
And I know what all those hats are, because you are author, publisher, speaker. You do everything. You're writing coach. How do you, we really need to have you on, like, the Hot Mess Express, so we can chat, hot messes. But what do you do to keep your train from derailing? I know we're not on the hot mess, but we're still going to talk about it.
That's okay. Hey, it bleeds in. Okay. Yes, you have to derail at some point. If not, how do you overcome that? So that's awesome. I love that question.
So the number one priority that I recommend for everybody is just be clear on your vision. And here's what I recommend. No matter what hat you're wearing at any stage through this indie process, there are 2 questions that you should answer for yourself. And if you keep these 2 questions in mind at all times, everything goes smoothly. 1, what is my purpose? That is, why am I doing this? You may want to be a writer just because you enjoy the process of writing. You may want to write a book. I'm a writing coach and an editor and everything. Sometimes with some of my clients, really the reason they want to write a book is because they want their kids or grandkids to know their family history, and they want to write a memoir. They have no visions of being a huge success, or and going internationally with it, or even locally. It's just like, what? I have a really fascinating history, and I would like my legacy would be to share it with family and friends. Well, in that case, if you know that's your purpose, that changes everything, every other hat you wear, because obviously you don't need to go top of the line with a production designer. You don't need to print 1,000 copies of the book. You have a parameter within which you're working. So 1, know your purpose. And then secondly, the second question is, who is my reader? You've got to know your reader, because you're connecting with someone individually. In my book, From Inspiration to Publication, I talk about knowing your reader, and I use an example. If you were to go back in the days when we used to go to cinemas, if you were to go into the lobby of a cinema and just look at all the movie posters, if you looked at every poster, you could tell specifically who their target audience is. And in this book, I share examples of famous classic movies like Jaws and The Godfather. I'll say, eventually, if everything goes the best it can possibly go, then you're marketing to your particular readership, or in that case, viewership. But suddenly, everybody's interested and everybody goes. If you look at the Godfather poster, or you look at the Jaws poster, you can see they are meant for a very different demographic. Yet each of those movies became huge blockbusters because they were so well made, and they just kind of caught the consciousness of the society at the time. And since, they continue to be classics. So if you know who your reader is, then you write to that reader, you create the book to the reader, and you market to that reader.
Mhm. And it's important to know, and I think this is something that, you and I as coaches and publishers, we know it's important to know when to begin to really think about your reader. Because, when you're first drafting, when you're first beginning your book, you really need to just figure out what is the story you're trying to tell,
Yeah.
right? What is this story coming? And then eventually you begin to find, once you've got most of it down, you begin to work with it, revise it, you begin to feel who the readership is.
Right.
And but it is very critical, like you saying, to know who the readers are so you can market, so that
Yes.
you can target everything, because you just can't hit a wide, the more narrow your target is, the more likely you're going to actually get there,
Yes.
so it's
I-
definitely a key point.
Yeah, I love your point, Fern, because sometimes you just have to just start writing. You just get in there and start writing, and then you figure out who your reader is. On the other hand, if you're a right brain person, then that's a great way. You just dive right in, you start writing, and it'll all appear to you, and all of a sudden everything just gels. If you're more of a left brain person, a math science kind of logical person, and you need that focus, then what I recommend to anybody who's going to be coming to this conference, or anybody who wants to write a book, is figure out a perfect person that represents your demographic. So for example, I worked with a client once, and she was writing a book about surviving domestic abuse, and she was really struggling because she had so much to say, and she had learned and everything, and she just wanted to put this in and this in and this in, and she was just all over the place. And she kept getting frustrated because she said, I can't figure out how to narrow everything into one focus. So what I recommended to her is this. She had gone to a woman's shelter to escape the abuse of her husband. And in that women's shelter, she met another woman, and they kind of sat across from each other and discussed their stories and everything. Well, it turns out that other woman ended up going back into her abusive home, whereas my client escaped it permanently. And I recommend it as a possibility. Imagine you're sitting across from the table from this woman still. Write the book as if you're speaking to her. What does she need to know so she doesn't go back into that situation? That then becomes the entire theme of the book. Instead of just generally talking about domestic abuse or generally talking about women's issues, it's just like, okay, for this narrow cross section of my readership, I'm going to help them realize, once you get out, how do you not go back in? How do you stay out and stay safe and be able to move on from there? That gave her the whole trajectory of her book.
Yes, and that's a very key point, because so many writers sometimes are very they're trying to encompass way more than they can in a single book.
Yes.
Yes, and so it's good to have a focal point of where you're trying to go with your book. And you're
Yes.
right, and like Greg is saying, some of us are both left and right brained, and it's really, when do those pieces of us come into play?
Yes.
Because, like, I know for me, I'm a discovery writer, right? I mean, when I first draft stuff, I'm just discovering it. I'm just letting it go any which way it goes. I'm just figuring out the story. But then there are moments in my process in which I do have to curve that, right? I mean, I was
Yes.
telling this in one of the classes I was in last week, that I was revising book one, and it was like close to the end. It was really pretty ready to go. And all of a sudden, I was tightening up this one conversation that Emil and Brenna are having. And then Emil starts talking about something totally, like, would take it in a whole different direction, the whole book. And I had to curtail him. I was like, no, sweetheart, this is not the time in which you get to decide where things are going,
No. Okay. Backpedal.
I had to rein him in, but sometimes you don't. There are moments in drafting when you're just like, okay, character, let's see where this is going to go, but then there's other times when, you have to know where you are in the process and trust that process.
Yes.
To say, okay, no, we're too far into the process for you to just let us go off on another tangent.
Right.
bring them back in. And so I think that that's very important to see that balance. You
Yes.
know?
I love the balance that you and I have here in this conversation, Fern, because I'm seeing the exact opposite happening in a novel series that I'm writing. So I was working on book 3, and I was like 2/3 through the book, and all of a sudden this character enters the book that wasn't even in the series, and all of a sudden she's just there, and I'm in the first draft, so I'm letting my right brain do what it's going to do and everything, and I'm just thinking, I don't know who this woman is. Why are you showing up now? But I just thought, I need to trust this process. I need to trust this process. And it turns out what she does in her scenes turns out to be pivotal in connecting what happens in book 1, 2, the first part of book 3, and then how it spins things into book 4. And so I just had to trust that she was there for a reason. So I love what you say. Yes, sometimes you have to rein it in, because I've been working with a client, and he's been working on a novel so many times. He just, he'll get it done, and then he'll revise it, and it becomes something else. And I keep telling him, you've actually written 3 or 4 novels in this time. You need to just trust that this one is as good as you can make it. Get it out, start shopping it out to publishers, and move on to the next one. Another thing you said, Fern, that I love is that these ideas are going to come, and you're going to have all these things, and it's going to be much bigger than the scope. The nice thing about any book that anyone writes, once you've written a book, you are an expert on that field, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, because I write both. And chances are, once you've written a book on that topic, your readers are going to want to read more books on that topic. So while you're in that first draft, you may be going all over the map with different ideas. It will probably turn out that some of the things you can extract from that first book, because they don't fit, they can be the impetus that starts your next book. You've already got some of the background information for the pieces that you can add to your sequel. If it's a work of fiction, or if it's another nonfiction book, then you can be looking at your subject from a slightly different angle and saying, okay, so I wrote this about this. Now here's this angle on that same topic. And readers are going to want it, because if they're interested in your topic, they don't want just one perspective. They want to see what other people's perspectives are, or your multiple perspectives, so they can get a nice, round, well-balanced view of what they love.
Oh yeah. And I mean, I love what you just said about perspectives, because I mean, I remember, some of the conversations around certain books, that you only get like one character's perspective. Sometimes people desperately want to know what the other character was feeling,
Yes.
And so sometimes those kinds of desires in your audience lead to really great little short stories or snippets that you can do for them, from to give them that other perspective. Oh, you were wondering what the male character was thinking here. Well, here's the little bit of from his point of view, and those can be. And I love that character that you said just walked onto your book, because that's like one of the rules. Sometimes you hear people talk about, like, oh, you can't add characters when you're like halfway through the book or whatever. No, you can, because you don't know. You don't know. Sometimes, I mean, in our own lives,
Yes.
do we only stick with the people we've known since high school? No,
Yes.
right? There's new people who come into our lives throughout our whole existence. So, you got to welcome people and what they bring to the story. And you never know, Roger. I mean, maybe you'll have a little spin-off with this one character, because maybe she'll become intriguing and you'll want to know what happened to her before she entered into this moment.
Yes.
Because that happened to me, and it ended up being a whole romance trilogy that I'm working on with this one character who really becomes critical in book 3.
Yeah.
And so we don't even have him yet too much in book 1 or 2, but I knew he was going to be important, and I knew his story was cool. So, that's a wonderful way to just discover. I agree with, we don't have the name of the Facebook user that said Pantsers Rule. I totally agree.
Oh, that is
Awesome.
Jan. That is Jan Andreas.
Jan! Yes, I agree. Pantsers. You and I are Pantsers, my friend. Yes. But you got to rein stuff in eventually. You got to organize and then begin to put it together so that it goes out the door, because then like you said, Roger, some people can just, revise a book for the rest of their lives, that one book.
So here are 2 bits of advice that I always give my clients and anybody, if I'm editing their books or anything. I will say, in the first draft, don't get it right, get it written. You really don't know what to revise until you have the whole thing from beginning to end. Because especially in fiction, you're heading to the big climactic scene. That's the payoff that the readers have been waiting for the whole time they've been reading. You set things up and complicate things. They want things resolved in some really exciting, explosive way. So in that first draft, don't get it right, get it written. For people who are seasoned writers, they already know this. And for those who are not, you may be surprised to learn this. But when you sit down to write, especially fiction, you will learn that really you're just a note taker. Your characters are writing your story. And the more you can get into that realm of trusting the process of writing and trusting the characters, I get to the point now where before I write, I meditate and I sit down with my characters in meditation. It's just like we sit around a conference table and I'm not leading the meeting, I'm just attending the meeting. And I'm saying, okay, I'm heading back to the writing desk. I want to know where you're going and what you're doing, kind of lead me through this and everything. And sometimes I get ideas in meditation, and sometimes it's just like I'm just opening my soul to say, I'm ready to take it in, lead me where you're going to go. The best writing I always do comes from that process of just letting my left brain wait for the editing process and letting that first draft be my right brain. Then in the editing process, that's the next stage. Then your left brain comes in. Your left brain is the organizer, and it's the one that can take the aerial view and say, oh, you know what? I need to introduce this idea much earlier because it's too shocking here, or I need to foreshadow this idea, or I need to expound on this because I have just too many chapters with just dialogue. I really need to balance this out. Let me have a chapter where something happens where people aren't just sitting around talking. Your left brain will see that. Your left brain, which is your editor, it just wants to help so much that it keeps diving in. But it's like having a second grade teacher who's teaching you to print, standing over your shoulder, noticing every little thing you're not doing right. You get so intimidated, you don't want to do it. To me, the biggest obstacle that most new writers have that when they don't finish a book is that they keep letting their editor jump in to try to fix things and change things and revise things when it's not time yet. Your left brain will have its time. Give your left brain the chance to get back. Give your right brain. Think of your right brain as a kindergartner in a Montessori school. Just a good teacher will have all the manipulatives and all the toys everywhere. You just let the kid go and play and learn. And then your teacher, your editor, will come back and say, okay, I see where the attraction is. I see where the child wants to do this. And, his or her aptitude is probably more toward math science than to this. And then the editor comes in and say, okay, now I can guide you because I know where this is going.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that is so very true. And I think that is one of the secrets. Nanowrimo is coming. I don't know. Do you nano?
Yes, I do. Sometimes I do it on my own month. I just decide, okay, this is, if I get the inspiration, it's like if it happens on April 17th, it's like, okay, I got May 17th to get this first draft done. Go. And I just hit it from there. But yes, I love NaNoWriMo.
Yeah, because that's really one of the things I think that helps writers who nano is to remember to set aside the editor, and to just write it, get the story down, tell yourself the story basically, and then come back in and add it. And I think that is something that is a power in that process of nanoing, that I've seen a lot of writers who get stuck because they just, they want to go back and they want to fix, and then they never get to the end. Getting to the end is so hard sometimes.
Yes.
Because your editor just wants to focus on this, get it right until, you just got to let it go. Let it go. Like that song.
And here's a story that might help, a brief story. But so I wrote the first novel in this 4-novel series. And I shared it with some editors and had them give me their feedback. And I told them, I know this is going to be a 4-book series. I already have the theme set up. I know what the titles are going to be. Both of them came back to me and said, don't do any revising on this book 1. Write the first draft of all 4 novels because I'm following the same characters through 4 different stages of their lives. So you don't know what you need to do early in their lives until you know what that last stage of their life ends up being. It's all going to be one huge story arc of 4 different books where one leads into the other and all means something. They said you could revise this book and polish this up just beautifully, but then when you get to your other books, you're going to have to rewrite that anyway, because some things that happen in book 3 and 4, you need to set up for it in book 1 because they're the same characters. They need to be consistent in personalities. Even as they grow and evolve and change, there are certain elements you're going to have to foreshadow, or you're going to have to say, yes, it would be believable that if this person did this at 50, then she would have done this, or at least had this personality at age 13. And that was so helpful. It's just like, okay, so I just need to let the editor sit back for all 4 books. Let me get the first draft of all 4 books done. And so what am I doing now? In that revision process, now that I have the first drafts of all 4 books done, I'm looking at pieces and thinking, okay, I need to introduce something about this concept from book 3. I need to let the reader know, oh, this is what this guy's background is in book 1. So that was some of the best editing advice I ever received, is hold off until you're there at the very end of the whole series, and then revise. Even though I'm not planning to release the whole series all at once, I'm going to have 1 book out and then just strategically market it so that 1 book comes out at a time. It's just like, I know where it's all going, and I'm going to polish and revise as I go, get through the whole process. But I have the beginning to the end already. I've got all 4 books, the first draft. Now I know what to do with it. Now my editor can take the front seat and say, okay, let me drive.
Nice.
And that's a really great piece of advice. I mean, I've seen a lot of times when you do have series like that, you do end up wishing you could go back in and change some things in the first one as you're moving towards the ending of the series. So having that first draft, even if it's messy and not really particularly well done, you've got the overall gist of it. And now okay, now I can really go ahead and say, yeah, book 1 is ready to go because I've layered all the pieces in that needed to be layered. And then, there's things that you put into a book 1 that you have to kind of bring back to the reader's mind through book 2 and 3 and 4, because they may not have culminated in anything in book 1. They're just sort of sitting there, but they are going to now become important here and now here. And so you have to kind of remind them, the reader, reestablishing pieces. So it's a really great process. It's exciting. I mean, I love the conversation around the left and the right brain, right? Because you always have this idea that writers are just creative souls and just free, and but we do have our left brain. Our left brain is there, and it does.
It's working. It's working. It's there.
Well, and I do want to affirm that people who are left brain can be as excellent a writer as someone who is naturally more right brain. We all use both sides of our brain. We just tend to favor one more than the other. If you're listening in and you're not sure what you are, here's a really good test. If in high school you had to write an essay and your teacher said you needed to turn in an outline, a rough draft, and a final draft. If you dove right into the rough draft, start writing, and then you revised it, made your final draft, and then from that final draft, you created an outline just because you knew you were going to get graded for it, you're probably right brain. Mm-hmm. If you're left brain and your teacher says do an outline, a rough draft, and a final draft, if you start with your outline because it makes sense to you, you want to organize your thoughts first before you start writing, you probably lean more left brain. Mm-hmm. They're both sides of the brain are excellent for writing. It's just you need to know that there's a time to employ one more than the other to make the whole process as fulfilling as you can. And the most important thing that I want to reiterate about the writing process, about going to this conference, about anything, make sure it's fun. Stay in the fun. Now, sometimes the fun is that it's so hard you can't perfect it. You know, Faulkner used to say, if any book I ever had the idea to write ever came out as good as I wanted it to be, my career would be over.
Yeah.
He said, you never will perfect it. He said, if you do, there's no creative impetus to continue. So just realize that writing is challenging, but that's part of the joy of it. That's part of the challenge. So as you go through your writing process and as you go through the conference, make sure to remind yourself, am I having fun? If you're losing the fun, then reroute, readjust, do something different, take a break. But you want to make sure that this whole process is fun, because if you've been inspired to write, you've received a tremendous gift from the universe.
Yeah.
The universe wants you to enjoy the process. If it becomes a labor, not of love, but of burden, you're not going to keep going. So
Yeah.
the fun in the process.
Absolutely. And me and Fern and Sandy and the Houston Writers Guild have never had any problems creating fun. Okay. We have fun conferences. And, you know, if this is any indication of how it's going to be, you will get a wealth of knowledge delivered in a fun way. Roger, going back to your left and right brain, I'm sitting here thinking, I was like, man, that sounds so great. Like, yeah, I'm right or left brain. But honestly, when I had to write papers in high school, I was like, sitting there like, what am I going to write about? Like, how is this going to flow? Like, I just stood there. So I was like, I don't know if just both sides worked at the same time. And it was like, Amy, you're an overload, or if none of them were working. You know, it's probably the second, but we'll go with the first one. Makes it sound better, right? For sure. But you guys, this conversation has been a wealth of information. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of what you're going to get from Indiepalooza, especially from our lovely keynote, Roger Leslie. So this is definitely a conference you're going to want to tune in. And if you just need inspiration to writing, just someone to inspire you, if you're having writer's block or whatever, this is definitely the conference for you. As we all know, I have not written a book. I have several people that have tried really hard, but the only person that has come extremely close to inspiring me to write a book is this man right here, Roger Leslie. I have his books. They are wonderful. So you guys attend this conference. But Roger, thank you so much for talking to us this morning. I mean, now I'm inspired to figure out which side of my brain actually fires on all cylinders, you know? So we just never know. But you guys, it has been so much fun. We hope you have a great week. Hey, welcome. October, falls in the air in Texas. It's not 100 degrees outside, okay? So welcome. But you guys have a great week. Roger, thank you so much. Fern, you are just awesome. But we will catch everybody this weekend at Indiepalooza and next week for Author Talk. Bye, everybody.